We are back, so to speak. I'm strategically placing myself on this lake to work with the wind so that I can spot lock and really pick apart weed beds. So I'm gonna start on this end of the lake and go this way against the wind. Again, better enabling spot lock to work for me. So I'm gonna try to find this year's first emerging weeds. We should be about that point now where there's some weeds up. We're also at the point now where the bass are post-spawn. The bluegills are probably post-spawn as well. Post-spawn bluegills, post-spawn bass, what are we gonna do? Well, the bass are chowing super hard. They're super mad at all the bluegills that were chasing them around on beds, but they go one of two ways. So they either want like a big bluegill sized meal, which you can go and throw all day and you're likely gonna get a better quality fish on average, but your ratio is going to go down and it's a little cumbersome. And then also one thing that they like, and this is coming straight from Mark Menendez, post-spawn funky time, give them something little. So I'm pulling out the spin pole, tiny little 16th ounce weight and a 4/0 worm hook, and I'm going to throw a little subtle straight tail worm and just barely drag it and float it through those weeds, and that gets some of those recovering females a little bit more apt to bite. Maybe they spent a bunch of energy chasing bluegills and whatnot. Seems to work really good. Just a finessey little Texas rig. So let's get rigged up and do it. So this is a Jean LaRue tattletale worm, and to be honest, I don't even know if they make them anymore. But you can find other worms like this. It's a very simple design, just like basically a straight worm with like a little appendage on the end. It really doesn't do a whole lot. And we're going with green pumpkin because why not? So let's go ahead, thread this worm up on it. Poke through a little bit and a little bit of text posing. Little finessey Texas rig. Might be a little too light to be thrown on a casting rod, which is again why you see me with the spin pole. So I don't have a graph and I don't know how deep we are. This lake doesn't get super deep. Therefore I'm gonna just kind of feel my way around with the tungsten. And when I start finding weeds, that's when I really slow down. So let the search begin. So I'm feeling weeds and bluegills. Really good sign. Little bluegill pecking on the end of my bait here, and I'm just knocking ever so gently into these standing weeds. And so now that I've found weeds and bluegills, I'm not leaving this area until I know that I've covered it thoroughly. So stop, fan cast for a little bit. Of course, we're spot locked facing into the wind, so I'm just casting ahead of me and bringing it back to the kayak. Feeling my way along. Just had a nice clump of cabbage floating by, real healthy. First of the year weeds, which is a really good sign. So there are some good broadleaf weeds up right now. And again, I'm just gonna feel my way around slowly until I find them and milk them. You know, to use the analogy here, this is like when you're going to the bathroom in the middle of the night and the lights are off. Not a giant. You know, you're bouncing back and forth between the walls. And same thing for the weed line, essentially. I'm making a cast. Oh, okay, I'm feeling weeds over here. Make a cast in the opposite direction. Not feeling weeds. So now I know that the weed line is more on this side of me or maybe on this side of me, depending on, you know, the cast. So make a mental note of that. The weeds, I'm feeling more weeds on this side. Make a visual picture under the water where that weed line kind of lays out. Weeds generally grow at kind of a specific depth, especially cabbage, right? So maybe they don't grow any deeper in this lake in 8-10 feet, but they don't grow any shallower than 6 feet. So it's a pretty narrow band where you can fish them. So, you know, again, you're feeling around, feel those weeds on one side, don't feel them over here. Concentrate your efforts on that area that you just fan cast and felt the weeds. That one gobbled it. I can freaking feel his mouth on the line. Oh, buddy. You better hit. Woo. Spot lock here. That worm is gone. Just about anyway. Nice. You know, if you're familiar with jig worming, that's another real, you know, staple Minnesota summer tactic, essentially. And in my opinion, this is just a jig worm with a little bit more unique action. You get that bullet weight sliding away from it, which gives that worm a little bit of a weightless appearance, which again just makes it a little easier for some of those shyer bass to make a meal of it. So, love catching them on a spin pole too. Oh, another not huge one, but bada bing. Probably spot lock before I forget here. Oh, cheek hooked. That ain't going nowhere, so no. Don't be afraid to really give them the beans, even with a spinning rod, especially if you got a really good blank. And I will say, these 13 Fishing Muse Blacks are an excellent blank. This one happens to be a 7-1 medium. The thing's got some backbone. You know, we're pulling fish from weeds right now, so I want that backbone. And this spinning rod's got plenty of it. Let's see if we can get another one out of there. You know, when I'm working this bait too, it's more or less just letting it kind of glide through the weeds. The tail doesn't have like a big ribbon on it or anything, obviously, so it's not like you need to give it action necessarily. It's just kind of a lackadaisical, whimsical little plastic that, again, I'm just casting out there, letting it sink down a little bit, and I'll just jig it a little bit, but more or less just drag it, and I'm just feeling the stems of the weeds with my bullet weight, knocking into them a little bit. If I get hung up slightly, just kind of pop it a little bit. We're just kind of slow dragging it through the weeds. Every once in a while, a little pop.